The helicopters descended like thunder from a clear sky, their black silhouettes cutting through the afternoon light as armed personnel flooded the quiet suburban street. "Where is Dr. Adrian Cole?" they shouted, weapons raised, scanning the confused faces of bystanders. Just blocks away, the man they desperately sought stood frozen on a cracked sidewalk, a termination letter crumpled in his fist, his entire world already shattered. He had no idea that in mere minutes, the worst day of his life would become something else entirely, something that would test every principle he'd ever held sacred. This is his story. If you're watching from anywhere in the world, drop your city in the comments below. I want to see how far this journey reaches, and if this story moves you, hit that like button. Now, let's begin. The fluorescent lights of Brookhaven General Hospital had been Adrian Cole's second son for 15 years. He knew every flicker, every buzz, every corner where the old wiring made the bulbs dim just slightly at 3 a.m. He knew the smell of the pediatric ward, that peculiar mix of antiseptic and the apple juice they kept stocked for the kids. He knew the sound of small shoes squeaking on linoleum floors, the way parents' voices dropped to whispers when they were afraid, and the exact weight of a child's hand gripping his finger before surgery. On that Tuesday afternoon in late September, Dr. Adrian Cole walked those familiar hallways for the last time. His hands, steady hands that had guided countless scalpels through delicate procedures, hands that had held newborns and closed wounds and wiped away more tears than he could count, now trembled as they gripped a small cardboard box. Inside were 15 years compressed into objects. A coffee mug Mia had painted for him in kindergarten, a framed photo of his daughter at her first soccer game, his medical journals, a stethoscope that had been a gift from his mentor, and a plaque that read, Compassionate Care Award 2019. The irony of that plaque burned in his chest. The security guard at the main entrance, Marcus, who had worked there almost as long as Adrian, looked away as the doctor approached. The old man's jaw was tight, his eyes suspiciously bright. He'd seen plenty of people leave this hospital over the years, but never like this. Never someone like Dr. Cole. "Marcus," Adrian said softly, stopping at the desk. "Don't." The guard's voice was rough. "Don't say goodbye. This isn't right. Everyone knows it isn't right." Adrian managed a small smile, though it felt like his face might crack. "Take care of yourself." "They'll regret this," Marcus said, finally meeting his eyes. "Mark my words, Doc. They'll regret this." Adrian nodded, not trusting himself to speak further, and pushed through the glass doors into the afternoon sunlight. The automatic doors hissed shut behind him with a finality that echoed in his bones. The parking lot stretched before him, and beyond it, the tree-lined streets of Brookhaven. It was a perfect September day, the kind that made you forget summer was ending, the kind where the light turned golden in the late afternoon and made everything look softer, kinder than it really was. Children would be getting out of school soon. Mia would be waiting for him at aftercare, probably working on another drawing, her tongue stuck out slightly in concentration, the way she always did when she was focused. How was he going to tell her? Adrian started walking, his feet finding the familiar route home automatically. He'd parked in the lot this morning, like always, but he couldn't bring himself to sit in his car yet. Couldn't bring himself to be enclosed in that small space with his thoughts, and the termination letter that felt like it was burning through his jacket pocket. The confrontation with Charles Brennan, the hospital's new chief financial officer, played on repeat in his mind like a nightmare he couldn't wake from. It had started 3 weeks ago when Brennan first arrived. The man was young, too young, Adrian had thought, with sharp suits and sharper eyes that saw only numbers and profit margins. He'd called it restructuring. He'd called it optimizing patient flow. He'd called it aligning with modern healthcare economics. Adrian called it what it was, putting money before people. The new policies had come fast. Average length of stay reduced by 40%. Pressure to discharge patients earlier, regardless of their actual recovery. Cuts to nursing staff. Restrictions on expensive procedures unless absolutely critical. And the pediatric ward, Adrian's domain, had been hit hardest of all. Children are expensive, Brennan had said in one meeting, as casually as someone commenting on the weather. Longer stays, more specialized care, lower reimbursement rates from insurance. We need to be more selective. More selective. As if sick children were products to be evaluated for profitability. The final confrontation had come yesterday, though Adrian had only learned it would be final this morning. Tommy Reeves was 8 years old, the same age as Mia. He'd come in 5 days ago with what his parents thought was a stomach flu. But Adrian had seen something in the boy's blood work that concerned him. Inflammatory markers that were climbing, a white blood cell count that told a story of something brewing beneath the surface. "I want to keep him another 3 days," Adrian had told the team during rounds. "Run more tests. That abdominal pain isn't resolving the way it should." The hospitalist had looked uncomfortable. "Dr. Cole, we've been getting pressure from administration. The insurance company is questioning the length of stay. They're saying he could be managed outpatient. He could also have appendicitis that's not showing classic presentation yet, or early Crohn's disease, or any number of things that could turn critical if we send him home too soon. The CFO wants to see you. He's been reviewing your cases." Adrian had gone to Brennan's office, still wearing his white coat, still thinking this was a conversation he could win with logic and medical evidence. Brennan's office was on the administrative floor, far from the sounds and smells of actual patient care. The walls were decorated with graphs showing revenue streams and cost-cutting measures. There were no pictures of patients, no reminders that this was a hospital, not a business. "Dr. Cole, thank you for coming." Brennan hadn't stood up, hadn't offered a handshake. He gestured to a chair across from his massive desk. "We need to discuss your patient management decisions. If this is about Tommy Reeves, it's about Tommy Reeves. It's about the Martinez girl you kept for a week when she could have been discharged in 3 days. It's about the Johnsons' premature twins you insisted on keeping in NICU for," he'd checked his notes, "17 days longer than the insurance company recommended. Those twins weighed 3 pounds each. They needed—" "What they needed," Brennan interrupted, his voice sharp, "was what their insurance would cover. Dr. Cole, I understand you have a personal investment in pediatric cases. I understand you're a single father, and perhaps that colors your judgment, but this hospital cannot sustain the kind of excessive care you're providing." Adrian's hands had clenched in his lap. "Excessive care? I'm giving these children the treatment they need." "You're giving them treatment that's costing this hospital millions in uncompensated care. Do you know how many insurance appeals we've had to file because of your cases? Do you know how many times we've had to eat the cost because you insisted on keeping patients beyond what was medically necessary?" Beyond what was medically necessary. Adrian's voice had risen despite himself. "Those twins went home healthy. The Martinez girl had a heart arrhythmia that we caught because we were monitoring her. Tommy Reeves has symptoms that could indicate Tommy Reeves has a stomach ache that his parents can monitor at home. He's being discharged today." "No." The word came out flat, final. "No, he's not." Brennan's expression had hardened. "Excuse me? I won't sign off on it. It's not safe. Give me 2 more days. Let me run the tests. Dr. Cole, I'm not asking for your permission. I'm informing you of the decision. Dr. Hammond will sign the discharge papers if you won't." Adrian had stood up, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. "Then Dr. Hammond can live with the consequences when that boy comes back through the ER in septic shock. I won't be part of this." "No," Brennan had said softly, dangerously. "You won't." The meeting had ended there. Adrian had returned to the pediatric ward, furious but certain he'd made his stand. He'd check on Tommy, he'd make sure the parents knew what symptoms to watch for, he'd give them his personal cell phone number and tell them to call immediately if anything changed. He'd done his job. He'd protected his patient. He hadn't realized he'd just ended his career. This morning, he'd been called to Human Resources before his shift even started. The director of HR, a woman named Patricia, who'd always been friendly, who'd come to the hospital Christmas parties and asked about Mia, couldn't meet his eyes as she slid the termination letter across the desk. "Effective immediately," she'd said, her voice carefully neutral. "Insubordination. Failure to comply with administrative directives. Unprofessional conduct." "Patricia, you can't be serious." "I'm sorry, Adrian. It's out of my hands. You need to collect your personal belongings and surrender your badge and access cards. Security will escort you out." "Let me at least say goodbye to my patients." "That won't be possible. Those are no longer your patients. I'm sorry." The security escort had been Marcus, at least. The old guard had walked slightly behind him, a silent presence that felt more like support than supervision, as Adrian cleaned out his locker and packed the cardboard box. Now, walking down Maple Avenue toward home, Adrian felt the full weight of what had happened settling over him like a suffocating blanket. He was 42 years old, a single father, unemployed. The mortgage payment was due in 2 weeks, Mia's school fees, the car payment, the medical bills from her broken arm last spring, his student loans for medical school that still had 8 years left on them. How long would his savings last? 3 months? 4, if he was careful. And then what? His phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out, saw a text from Jennifer, one of the pediatric nurses. I can't believe what they did. Tommy's parents are devastated. They wanted to say goodbye. We all wanted to say goodbye. This is wrong. Another buzz. Another message. This one from Dr. Sarah Chen, a colleague who'd been his friend since his residency. I heard. I'm so sorry. They're making a huge mistake. Call me when you can. More messages flooded in. Nurses, other doctors, even some patients' parents who'd somehow already heard the news. Adrian turned his phone off. He couldn't handle the sympathy right now. Couldn't handle the anger on his behalf or the assurances that everything would work out, because he wasn't sure it would. The street around him was quiet. Most people were at work. A few stay-at-home parents pushed strollers, walked dogs, tended gardens. Normal life, continuing as if nothing had changed. As if Adrian's entire world hadn't just imploded. He'd chosen medicine because he wanted to help people. Because when he was 12 years old, a doctor had saved his younger sister's life. And he'd seen firsthand what it meant to have someone fight for you, to refuse to give up even when it would have been easier. He'd chosen pediatrics because children deserved advocates, because they couldn't fight the system themselves, couldn't argue with insurance companies or hospital administrators. They needed someone to stand between them and all the forces that saw them as line items on a budget sheet. He'd thought that was what doctors were supposed to do. Apparently, he'd been wrong. Maple Avenue stretched ahead of him, familiar houses on either side. The Morrison place with its perpetually overgrown lawn, the Chen family's house with the carefully tended roses, the old Victorian that had been converted into apartments. And then, in the distance, he saw his own house. The small 2-bedroom cottage he'd bought after the divorce, when everything had fallen apart the first time. The house where he'd rebuilt his life, where he and Mia had created their own little world. How was he going to tell his daughter that he'd lost his job? How could he explain that doing the right thing sometimes came with consequences? That standing up for what you believed in could cost you everything? She was 8 years old. She still believed in heroes. She still believed her father could fix anything. What would she think when she realized he couldn't even fix this? Adrian stopped walking. He stood in the middle of the sidewalk, the afternoon sun warm on his face, the cardboard box growing heavy in his arms. For a moment, just a moment, he let himself feel the full weight of it, the fear, the anger, the crushing sense of failure. He dedicated 15 years to that hospital, 15 years of late nights and missed school events and holidays in the ER, 15 years of pouring everything he had into caring for sick children, of holding parents' hands while they cried, of celebrating victories and mourning losses. And it had ended with a termination letter and a security escort. Adrian took a deep breath. Then another. He forced his shoulders back, forced his grip to steady on the box. He would figure this out. He had to. Mia was depending on him. Maybe he could find another position, send out his resume, network with colleagues at other hospitals. It would take time, but he was a good doctor. Someone would hire him, unless Brennan had already called around. Unless the story was already spreading through the medical community, Dr. Adrian Cole, insubordinate, difficult to work with, puts patients before profit. In today's healthcare landscape, that last one might actually be seen as a liability. Adrian started walking again, his mind spinning through possibilities, trying to build a plan, trying to find solid ground beneath his feet. He was so lost in thought that he almost didn't hear it at first. A low rumble, distant but growing louder. A sound that didn't belong in this quiet residential neighborhood in the middle of a Tuesday afternoon. Adrian looked up, squinting against the sun, and then his world tilted again. 2 black helicopters were dropping out of the sky, their rotors thundering so loud that car alarms started shrieking up and down the street. People burst out of their houses, shading their eyes, pointing upward. Dogs barked. A child started crying somewhere nearby. The helicopters descended rapidly toward the empty field that separated Maple Avenue from the new housing development on the other side. Wind from their rotors whipped through the trees, sending leaves spiraling into the air, rattling fences, and flattening the tall grass in the field. Adrian stood frozen, his medical training trying to make sense of what he was seeing. Emergency response? But there were no sirens, no fire, no obvious disaster. Military? But these weren't military aircraft. They were civilian helicopters, expensive looking, with dark-tinted windows. The aircraft touched down in the field, their skids settling into the grass with surprising gentleness despite the violence of their approach. Before the rotors even stopped spinning, the doors were sliding open. Men in tactical gear poured out. Not military uniforms, something else. Black tactical vests, communications equipment, weapons holstered at their sides. Behind them came people in different uniforms, white, like medical personnel. Adrian's heart rate kicked up. This was a medical emergency. Had to be. But what kind of emergency required an armed tactical team? The personnel fanned out, some establishing a perimeter, others moving with clear purpose toward the street where Adrian stood. Toward him. "Sir!" One of the men was jogging toward him, his hand not on his weapon, but raised in what looked like a gesture of urgency rather than threat. "Sir, are you a resident of this area?" Yes." Adrian's voice came out hoarse. "What's happening? Is there a chemical spill? A terrorist threat?" "We're looking for someone. It's urgent. Do you know where we can find Dr. Adrian Cole?" The world seemed to stop. The cardboard box slipped from Adrian's arms, hitting the sidewalk with a muffled thump. His daughter's painted mug, the one he'd been so careful with, the one that had survived 15 years in a hospital locker, rolled out and cracked against the concrete. Adrian stared at the man in tactical gear, at the helicopters still running in the field behind him, at the team of medical personnel gathering near the aircraft. "I'm Adrian Cole." The man's expression flooded with relief. He turned, shouting to his team, "Found him! Dr. Cole is here!" Suddenly, Adrian was surrounded. The tactical team leader, a man with iron-gray hair and eyes that had seen too much, stepped forward. "Dr. Cole, my name is Marcus Stone. I'm with Sentinel Security Services. We've been searching for you for the past 40 minutes. We need your help immediately." "My help? I don't understand." There's no time to explain in detail. A child has been critically injured in a vehicle accident approximately 60 miles from here. He's being transported to our mobile surgical facility, but his injuries are severe. Multiple internal trauma, probable ruptured spleen, possible liver laceration. He's losing blood fast. Adrian's mind automatically clicked into clinical mode even as confusion swirled through him. "Get him to the nearest trauma center. Brookhaven General has a good—" "We tried Brookhaven General first," Stone interrupted. "We tried every hospital within a 100-mile radius. This isn't a standard case, Dr. Cole. The child has a rare anatomical variation, heterotaxy syndrome, with complex vascular architecture. Attempting surgery without specific expertise in this condition would likely be fatal." Heterotaxy syndrome. Adrian's breath caught. He'd only seen 3 cases in his entire career. A condition where organs were arranged abnormally in the body, where the standard roadmap of human anatomy didn't apply. Operating on a patient with heterotaxy was like performing surgery while reading the blueprint upside down. Every assumption had to be questioned, every move calculated with extraordinary care. "We need someone who's successfully operated on heterotaxy patients with major trauma," Stone continued. "Our research team found exactly 3 surgeons in this region with that experience. 1 is out of the country, 1 is in surgery and can't be reached. You're the 3rd. How did you even— Who is this child? Whose team are you?" Stone's jaw tightened. "The boy's name is Ethan. His family is prominent. They have resources. When the accident happened, they activated every channel available to find the right surgeon. We've been trying to reach you for 40 minutes, Dr. Cole. Your hospital said you were no longer employed there. Your cell phone was off. We were heading to your home address when we spotted you on the street. Prominent resources. The kind of family that could deploy private helicopters and security teams within minutes of an emergency. The kind of family that could find a specific surgeon in the middle of a Tuesday afternoon and mobilize everything necessary to transport both doctor and patient to wherever they needed to be." Adrian's mind was racing. "Where's your surgical facility?" 20 minutes from here by helicopter. It's a private medical center, fully equipped for major surgery. We have a team standing by, but they need someone who knows heterotaxy anatomy. Someone who's done this before. I've done it, Adrian said slowly. 3 times. 2 survived. We know. We have your case files. We know your success rate. We know you're the best option this boy has. Stone's eyes were intense, urgent. Dr. Cole, I understand this is irregular. I understand you have questions. But there's a child bleeding out, and every minute we stand here talking is a minute we don't have. Behind Stone, the medical team was watching, waiting. Adrian could see the tension in their postures, the way they kept glancing at their watches. A child, bleeding out, with a condition that made him extraordinarily vulnerable, that turned a standard trauma surgery into a life-or-death gamble. And they wanted Adrian, not the hospital that had fired him, not Dr. Hammond, who'd been so willing to sign discharge papers for Tommy Reeves. They wanted the doctor who'd just been terminated for caring too much, for putting patients before policy. I was fired this morning, Adrian said. Do you understand that? I'm not currently credentialed at any hospital. If something goes wrong, we have legal counsel standing by to handle all credentialing and liability issues. The family has authorized whatever measures necessary. Right now, Dr. Cole, we just need you to say yes or no. Will you help this child? Adrian looked down at the broken mug on the sidewalk. Mia's mug, painted in kindergarten with wobbly letters that spelled Best Daddy. The mug that had sat on his desk through 15 years of patient care, through countless nights when he'd stayed late to check on a sick child one more time, through all the moments when he'd chosen medicine over easier paths. He thought about Tommy Reeves, being discharged today whether it was safe or not. He thought about all the children he wouldn't be able to help anymore, all the battles he wouldn't be able to fight. He thought about Mia, waiting for him at aftercare, expecting him to pick her up in an hour. And he thought about a child he'd never met, bleeding internally, whose anatomy was a puzzle that could kill him if the surgeon didn't know the solution. I need to make a call, Adrian said. I need to tell someone where I'm going. My daughter. You can call from the helicopter, but we need to move now. Adrian pulled out his phone, turned it back on. It immediately buzzed with more messages, more calls. He ignored them all and dialed Sarah Chen's number. She answered on the first ring. Adrian, I've been trying to reach you. Sarah, I need a huge favor. I need you to pick up Mia from aftercare and keep her at your place for a few hours, maybe overnight. I can't explain right now, but it's an emergency. What? What's wrong? Are you okay? I'm fine. There's a situation, a medical emergency. Please, Sarah, I need to know Mia's safe. He could hear the confusion in her voice, but also the concern. Of course I'll get her. Adrian, what's happening? I'll explain later. Tell her I love her. Tell her I'll see her soon. He hung up before she could ask more questions. I need to grab my things, he told Stone, gesturing to the spilled cardboard box. His hands were shaking as he bent to pick up his belongings, carefully wrapping the broken mug in his white coat before placing it back in the box. Leave it, Stone said. We'll have someone secure it. We need to go. My medical journals. Are they going to help you in surgery? Adrian stopped. Stone was right. All the theory in the world wouldn't matter once he was in that operating room. Either he remembered the anatomy or he didn't. Either his hands would be steady or they wouldn't. Fine, let's go. The walk to the helicopters felt surreal. Neighbors had gathered on their lawns, phones out, recording. Adrian could imagine the social media posts, black helicopters in Brookhaven, military operation on Maple Avenue. They'd probably trend locally within the hour. He wondered if any of them recognized him, if any of them knew that the man being escorted to the helicopter had just been fired from his job that same morning. The helicopter's interior was nothing like the medical transports Adrian had worked with during his residency. This was luxury repurposed for emergency response, leather seats, high-end medical monitoring equipment, a miniature surgical station. A paramedic was already inside, checking supplies. Stone gestured for Adrian to climb in, then followed, taking the seat across from him. The moment they were secured, the pilot's voice crackled over the intercom. We have Dr. Cole, proceeding to the facility. ETA, 18 minutes. The rotors spun faster, and the ground dropped away. Adrian watched Brookhaven recede below him, His house, the spilled cardboard box on the sidewalk, the hospital in the distance where he'd spent 15 years of his life, all of it shrinking, becoming abstract, like a map of a life that belonged to someone else. "Tell me about Ethan's injuries," he said, forcing himself to focus. "Everything you know." Stone pulled out a tablet, brought up what looked like emergency medical reports. Vehicle accident approximately 90 minutes ago. The car was hit by a truck that ran a red light. Ethan was in a car seat, properly restrained, but the impact was severe. Initial assessment shows unstable vital signs, distended abdomen suggesting internal bleeding, multiple contusions and lacerations. Paramedics started 2 IV lines, began fluid resuscitation. And they knew about the heterotaxy? Medical alert bracelet. The on-scene team recognized immediately that this was beyond standard protocol. They called it in, and the family's emergency response was activated. Adrian studied the reports, his brain automatically processing the information, building a surgical plan. How old is he? 11. 3 years older than Mia. Old enough to understand fear. Old enough to know that something terrible had happened. Tell me about the facility we're going to. What equipment do you have? What's your blood supply situation? Do you have a pediatric anesthesiologist? For the next 15 minutes, Stone answered every question, pulling up specifications, connecting Adrian with the surgical team via radio. The facility was, as promised, state-of-the-art, better equipped than many hospitals Adrian had worked in. The team standing by included a pediatric anesthesiologist who'd trained at Johns Hopkins, 2 surgical nurses with trauma experience, and a perfusionist in case they needed to go on bypass. Everything he could possibly need, except the one thing that mattered most, certainty that he could save this child's life. The helicopter began to descend. Through the window, Adrian could see they were approaching what looked like a private medical complex, a sleek, modern building surrounded by manicured grounds, far from any residential areas. Isolated, discreet, the kind of place where people with resources could receive medical care away from public hospitals, away from prying eyes. They touched down on a rooftop helipad. The moment the skids contacted the surface, the doors were opening and new personnel were rushing forward. A woman in surgical scrubs, mid-40s, with kind eyes and steady hands, extended her hand to help Adrian out. "Dr. Cole, I'm Dr. Rebecca Martinez, anesthesiology. We've been briefed on the case. The patient is in OR2, currently being stabilized. His vitals are deteriorating. We're ready when you are." No time for introductions. No time for doubts. Adrian was already moving, following Dr. Martinez through a door and down a pristine hallway. The facility smelled like any hospital, that particular combination of antiseptic and air conditioning, and something else, something clinical and cold. But this wasn't like any hospital Adrian had worked in. Everything was too new, too perfect. The equipment was top of the line. The staff moved with military precision, and somewhere ahead, in an operating room, a child was dying. They reached a changing area. "Scrubs in there," Dr. Martinez said. "I'll wait for you." Adrian changed quickly, his hands moving through the familiar routine. Blue scrubs, surgical cap, mask hanging around his neck. He caught a glimpse of himself in the mirror, pale, exhausted, eyes still carrying the weight of the morning's termination letter. He looked like a man who'd lost everything. He felt like a man being given one more chance. When he emerged, Dr. Martinez was reviewing a chart. She handed it to him without a word. Adrian scanned the information as they walked. Blood pressure dropping, heart rate climbing, oxygen saturation borderline. The boy was crashing. They reached the OR doors. Beyond them, Adrian could hear the controlled chaos of a trauma team managing a critical patient. "Dr. Cole," a voice said behind him. He turned to see Stone, still in his tactical gear, standing at a respectful distance. "The family is aware you're here. They wanted me to tell you." He paused, seemed to be searching for words. "Whatever you need, whatever it takes. Just save him. Whatever it takes." Adrian nodded and pushed through the OR doors. The scene that greeted him was both familiar and intensely wrong. A small body on the table, too still except for the mechanical rise and fall of the ventilator. Monitors beeping urgently, nurses moving with practiced efficiency. Blood, too much blood, in the suction canisters, and on the boy's exposed abdomen, clear signs of internal hemorrhage. The distension Stone had mentioned, the discoloration of tissue beneath the skin. "Pressure's dropping again," someone called out. 80/40. "Increase the pressors," Dr. Martinez ordered, moving to the head of the table. She looked at Adrian. "We're running out of time." Adrian approached the table. For just a moment, he let himself look at the boy's face. Ethan, 11 years old, dark hair, pale skin, features relaxed by anesthesia but still showing traces of pain around the eyes. Someone's son. Someone's entire world. Like Mia was to him. "Talk to me about his anatomy," Adrian said, his voice steady now, clinical. "What do we know about his specific variation?" A nurse handed him a folder with medical imaging. MRI from 6 months ago. His spleen is on the right side, liver spans the midline, the heart has a complex double-outlet configuration. Vascular architecture is significantly variant. Adrian studied the images, rewriting the surgical roadmap in his mind. In a normal patient, you could count on certain landmarks, certain expectations. In heterotaxy, every assumption was dangerous. "We need to open him up," he said. "Now. If we wait for his pressure to stabilize, he'll bleed out. Dr. Martinez, can you keep him alive while I work?" "That's my job." Adrian held out his hands. A nurse helped him into a surgical gown, tied it behind him, helped him into gloves. "Scalpel," he said. And then, for the first time since Charles Brennan had handed him that termination letter, Adrian Cole felt like himself again. His hands didn't shake as he made the first incision. The blade parted skin with the precision that came from 15 years of muscle memory. Blood welled up immediately, but Adrian's hands were already moving, cauterizing vessels, his movements economical and sure. Around him, the surgical team fell into rhythm, a choreography they'd performed countless times before, though never with him, never with these stakes. "Suction," Adrian said quietly, and the nurse responded instantly, clearing his visual field. "Retractors." The metal instruments clicked into place, holding the incision open. Adrian peered into the cavity, and his heart sank. It was worse than he'd expected. Blood pooled in the abdomen, dark and ominous. The internal architecture was exactly as the MRI had shown, mirror-reversed, twisted, a puzzle that would confuse anyone expecting normal anatomy. But beyond that, the trauma was severe. He could see the source immediately. The spleen, positioned on the right side where it had no business being, was lacerated badly. A deep tear across its surface pumped blood with each weak heartbeat. "We've got active hemorrhage from the spleen," Adrian announced, his voice steady despite the cold fear settling in his chest. "Dr. Martinez, how's he doing?" "Pressure's still dropping, 70/35, heart rate 140. Too fast." The boy's heart was racing, trying desperately to pump blood that was draining into his own abdominal cavity. "I need 4 units of O- standing by. And get me a vascular clamp, the small one." The instruments appeared in his hand as if by magic. This team was good, better than good. They anticipated his needs, moved with quiet efficiency. Adrian's fingers worked carefully, isolating the splenic artery. In a normal patient, it would be on the left. In Ethan, he had to reach across the midline, work around the displaced liver, navigate blood vessels that ran in configurations he'd only seen twice before in his career. "Clamping," he said, and applied the instrument. The bleeding slowed immediately, but didn't stop. There was another source somewhere. "Suction. More light here." The overhead surgical lamp shifted, illuminating the field. Adrian probed deeper, and there, a small tear in the portal vein, barely visible, but leaking steadily. "Damn," he breathed. The portal vein was critical, carrying blood from the intestines to the liver. In Ethan's case, with his liver spanning the midline, the anatomy was even more complex. One wrong move, and they could lose vascular supply to half his organ systems. "Talk to me, Dr. Cole," Dr. Martinez said from behind her anesthesia station. "I need to know what we're dealing with. Portal vein injury. I can repair it, but I need time. Can you buy me 15 minutes? "I can try." Her voice was tight. "Transfusing now. But his pressure's not responding well. Whatever you're going to do it fast." Adrian's world narrowed to the small field of tissue in front of him. His hands moved with careful deliberation, every motion calculated. Thread the suture, tie the knot, check the tension. Move to the next point. Everything else, the termination letter, the uncertain future, even Mia waiting at Sarah's house, faded into background noise. There was only the surgery, only this moment, only this child's life balanced on the edge of his scalpel. "Pressure's 60/30, Dr. Martinez called out. "Adrian, I'm losing him. I'm almost there. 30 more seconds." But 30 seconds felt like an eternity. Adrian's fingers worked the suture, pulling tissue together with exactly the right tension. Too tight, and it would tear. Too loose, and it wouldn't hold. Around him, he could hear the monitor's urgent beeping, the quiet efficiency of the nurses, the hiss of the ventilator breathing for a boy who couldn't breathe for himself. "Last stitch," Adrian said. "Done. Release the clamp slowly." The nurse controlling the vascular clamp eased it open. For a heart-stopping moment, Adrian watched the repair, waiting to see if it would hold. The bleeding stopped. "Suture's holding," he announced, relief flooding through him. "Now let's deal with this spleen." But even as he said it, another alarm began to sound. "VTAC," Dr. Martinez said sharply. "His heart's going into arrhythmia." Adrian's head snapped up. On the monitor, the heart rhythm had deteriorated into a dangerous pattern: ventricular tachycardia, too fast and too irregular to pump blood effectively. "Starting compressions," one of the nurses said, moving to the side of the table. "No," Adrian said quickly. "His chest is closed, and with his heart anatomy, you could cause more damage. Dr. Martinez, can you cardiovert?" "Already charging. Everyone clear." The team stepped back from the table. Adrian lifted his hands, still dripping with blood, away from contact with Ethan's body. The defibrillator discharged with a thump that made the small body on the table jerk. For 3 seconds that felt like 3 hours, they all stared at the monitor. The rhythm converted. Irregular, but stable enough. "Sinus rhythm," Dr. Martinez confirmed. "But barely. We don't have much time, Adrian." "I know." He was already back in the abdomen, working on the spleen. The organ was too damaged to save. He could see that now. Normally, losing your spleen wasn't life-threatening. But with Ethan's complex anatomy, with his vascular system already compromised, removing the organ carried significant risks. Still, it was better than bleeding to death. "We're taking the spleen," Adrian announced. "I need to ligate the vessels. Clamp." The next 10 minutes were a controlled race against time. Adrian worked with steady precision, tying off blood vessels, carefully separating the damaged spleen from surrounding tissue, all while navigating an anatomical landscape that would have baffled most surgeons. This was why they'd called him. This was what 15 years of experience had prepared him for. The ability to read a body's unique story, to adapt, to make split-second decisions when the textbook answers didn't apply. "Spleen's out," he said finally, handing the damaged organ to a waiting nurse. "How's his pressure?" "Stabilizing, 80/50. Not great, but better." Adrian surveyed the abdomen, checking for additional injuries. The liver looked intact despite the trauma. The intestines showed some bruising, but no perforations. The stomach was undamaged. But something was bothering him, a nagging sense that he was missing something. "More suction here," he said, clearing blood from the upper quadrant. And then he saw it, a small collection of fluid near the diaphragm. Not blood. Something else. He touched it carefully with a probe, and his stomach dropped. "We've got bile leakage. Small bowel injury, probably at the ligament of Treitz." A bile leak could be catastrophic if not addressed. It would cause infection, peritonitis, sepsis. "Can you repair it?" Dr. Martinez asked. "I have to." Adrian's back was starting to ache from standing hunched over the table. His hands, while steady, were beginning to feel the strain. He'd been operating for nearly 90 minutes now, and the complexity of the case was taking its toll. But he couldn't stop, not yet. Not until this child was safe. "Extending the incision," he said. "I need better visualization." The scalpel moved again, giving him access to the upper abdomen. There, a small perforation in the small bowel, right where he'd suspected. Bile was leaking through, contaminating the abdominal cavity. "Irrigation, lots of it. We need to wash this out before I close the bowel." For the next 20 minutes, the team worked to clean the contaminated area, while Adrian carefully repaired the perforation. 2 layers of sutures placed with meticulous care. Each stitch had to be perfect. One weak point and the repair could fail, and they'd be right back where they started. How much blood has he received? Adrian asked. 6 units so far, Dr. Martinez replied. His hemoglobin's coming up, but slowly. 6 units. For a child Ethan's size, that was significant. They were essentially replacing his entire blood volume. Keep it coming. His bone marrow will recover, but right now we need to keep him perfused. Adrian finished the bowel repair and stepped back, studying his work. The surgical field looked better now. The major bleeding was controlled. The perforation was sealed. But Ethan's body had been through tremendous trauma, and the surgery itself was adding to that stress. I'm ready to close, Adrian said, but I want to place a drain. With the bile contamination, there's a high risk of abscess formation. We need to monitor for any ongoing leakage. Agreed, Dr. Martinez said. His vitals are holding steady now. Temperature's a bit low, but that's expected. The drain went in smoothly, a small tube that would allow any accumulating fluid to escape rather than building up inside. Then Adrian began the careful process of closing the abdomen, layer by layer. Peritoneum, fascia, subcutaneous tissue, skin. Each layer approximated with care. Each suture placed to minimize scarring. As he worked, he became aware of voices outside the OR, raised voices, tense with anxiety. That's the family, one of the nurses said quietly. They've been waiting since before you arrived. The family. Parents who were living through every parent's worst nightmare, waiting for news about whether their child would live or die. Adrian understood that terror on a visceral level. Every time Mia got sick, every time she fell or hurt herself, he felt that spike of fear. But this was different. This was a child in critical condition, his life held together by sutures and willpower. Last stitch, Adrian said, tying off the final suture on the skin. Dressing. The nurse applied sterile gauze, securing it with surgical tape. Adrian stepped back from the table, his shoulders sagging with exhaustion. Surgery's complete, he announced to the room. Dr. Martinez, he's all yours. Keep him sedated and intubated for at least 12 hours. I want hourly labs checking his coagulation factors, liver function, and kidney function. Watch that drain output closely. If it increases or changes color, page me immediately. Understood. Dr. Martinez was already adjusting medication drips, fine-tuning Ethan's sedation and pain management. He's stable enough to transfer to ICU. Good work, Adrian. Adrian pulled off his gloves, then his surgical mask. His face felt numb, his hands strange without the familiar weight of instruments. He looked down at Ethan one more time. The boy's face was still pale, but there was color in his lips now, a sign that oxygen was reaching his tissues. He was alive. It wasn't a guarantee of recovery, not yet, but he was alive. I'll go talk to the family, Adrian said quietly. Stone appeared at the OR door as if summoned, still in his tactical gear. Dr. Cole, this way. The hallway outside was pristine, quiet except for the soft hum of medical equipment. Stone led Adrian to a private consultation room, and as they approached, Adrian could hear crying, a woman's voice, raw with fear and exhaustion. Stone opened the door, and Adrian stepped inside. The room was tastefully decorated, more like a hotel suite than a hospital. A man and woman sat on a leather couch, holding each other. The woman's face was buried in the man's shoulder, her body shaking with sobs. The man looked up as Adrian entered, and the hope and terror in his eyes was almost unbearable. Dr. Cole? The man stood, steadying his wife. Our son, is he... Ethan's alive, Adrian said immediately, because that was what they needed to hear first. The surgery went well. He's stable and being transferred to the ICU. The woman's knees buckled. Her husband caught her, and they clung to each other, crying openly now, but different tears, tears of relief rather than grief. Adrian waited, giving them a moment. He'd delivered news like this before, though never under circumstances quite like these. Please, the man said finally, his voice hoarse. Please sit. Tell us everything. Adrian sank into a chair across from them, suddenly aware of how exhausted he was. Your son had several serious injuries from the accident. The most critical was a laceration to his spleen and a tear in his portal vein. That's a major blood vessel. Because of his heterotaxy syndrome, the anatomy was complex, but we were able to control the bleeding. You removed his spleen? The woman asked. Her eyes were red, but she was listening intently, trying to understand. We had to. It was too damaged to save. Ethan can live a full, normal life without a spleen, but he'll need to be careful about infections. We'll talk about vaccinations and preventive measures once he's recovered. What else? The man pressed. You said several injuries. A small perforation in his bowel. We repaired it and irrigated the area thoroughly. I've placed a drain to monitor for any complications. He's received significant blood transfusions. His body went through a lot of trauma, both from the accident and from the surgery itself. Adrian paused, choosing his next words carefully. The next 72 hours are critical. We'll be watching closely for signs of infection, bleeding, or organ dysfunction. Ethan's young and otherwise healthy, which is in his favor. But I won't lie to you. This was a serious injury, and recovery will take time. The woman was crying again, but quietly now. Can we see him? Once he's settled in the ICU, Dr. Martinez, the anesthesiologist, will keep him sedated for at least 12 hours to let his body rest. He'll be on a ventilator to help him breathe. There will be a lot of tubes and monitors. It can be frightening to see, but each one serves an important purpose. Will he be okay? The father asked. I mean, long term, will he recover fully? If we can get through the next few days without complications, I'm optimistic. Children are remarkably resilient. His heterotaxy syndrome complicates things, but the underlying condition is stable. The trauma was the issue, and we've addressed that. The father stood, extended his hand. Dr. Cole, we can never thank you enough. When they told us what had happened, when they said they couldn't find a surgeon who knew how to operate on Ethan's condition, I thought. His voice broke. I thought we were going to lose him. Adrian shook the offered hand, feeling the man's grip, strong, desperate, grateful. I'm glad I could help. We were told you were no longer at Brookhaven General, the mother said. She'd composed herself, was watching Adrian with sharp, intelligent eyes. That you'd left your position there. Adrian hesitated. How much had they been told? That's correct. Today was my last day at the hospital. And yet you came anyway. To help our son. Any doctor would have done the same. Would they? The father's eyes were penetrating. We made calls to 7 hospitals, spoke to dozens of doctors. Most said they couldn't help with Ethan's condition. 2 said they could try, but when we asked about their experience with heterotaxy cases, they admitted they'd only seen it in textbooks. He sat back down, still holding his wife's hand. Mr. Stone's team found your case files. 3 successful surgeries on heterotaxy patients with major trauma. You saved 2 of them. The one you lost, we read the report. That child had injuries that were incompatible with life before she even reached the hospital. You gave her a chance when no one else would. Adrian didn't know what to say to that. The case they were referencing had haunted him for years, a 7-year-old girl with heterotaxy who'd been in a house fire. He'd fought for 6 hours to save her, but the damage had been too extensive. Dr. Cole, the mother said softly, why did you leave Brookhaven General? The question hung in the air. Adrian could have deflected, could have given some vague answer about seeking new opportunities. But something about this moment, about the raw honesty in this room, made him choose truth instead. I was terminated this morning. There was a disagreement about patient care. The hospital's new administration has been implementing cost-cutting measures, pressuring doctors to discharge patients earlier, limit expensive procedures. I had a patient, a child with concerning symptoms. They wanted him discharged. I refused. Adrian met their eyes. I was fired for insubordination. The room was silent for a long moment. You lost your job for standing up for a patient, the father said slowly. And then, hours later, you agreed to perform emergency surgery on a child you'd never met, with no credentialing, taking on enormous liability. Your son needed help. That's all that mattered. The mother stood, walked to where Adrian sat, and took his hands in hers. Dr. Cole, I want you to know something. My husband and I have resources, significant resources. We've already spoken with our legal team about ensuring you face no consequences for operating today. Whatever credentialing or licensing issues might arise, we'll handle them. That's not necessary. It absolutely is necessary, the father interrupted. You saved our son's life under circumstances that would have made most doctors walk away. We won't let you suffer for that." Adrian felt a strange tightness in his chest. All day he'd felt like the ground was crumbling beneath his feet. First the termination, then the impossible choice on the street, then the surgery that had pushed him to his limits. But now, sitting in this room with these grateful parents, he felt something else, something he hadn't expected. Purpose. "I appreciate that," he said carefully, "but right now I'm more concerned about Ethan's recovery than my own situation." "Of course." The mother released his hands, stepped back. "Can you stay? At least for the next few days? We'd feel better if you were overseeing his care." "I don't have privileges at this facility." "You do now," Stone said from where he'd been standing quietly by the door. "I've been authorized to offer you temporary credentials as a consulting surgeon. Your compensation will be commensurate with the emergency nature of the case." Adrian blinked. What?" "The family wants you on Ethan's care team. The facility's medical director has approved it. All we need is your agreement." It was too much to process. This morning he'd been unemployed, his career in shambles. Now he was being offered a consulting position, compensation, legal protection. "I need to make some calls," Adrian said. "My daughter, she's staying with a friend, but I need to arrange for someone to watch her if I'm going to be here overnight." "Bring her here," the mother said immediately. "This facility has family accommodations. She can stay with you." "I couldn't ask." "You're not asking, we're offering." She glanced at her husband, who nodded. "Dr. Cole, you've given us the greatest gift imaginable, our son's life. Please, let us do this small thing for you." Adrian felt overwhelmed. "I need to think about this. Talk to my daughter, make sure she's comfortable with it." "Of course, take all the time you need." The father pulled out a business card, handed it to Adrian. "My private number, call any time, day or night, if you need anything." Adrian looked at the card. The name embossed in elegant script, Richard Castellan, CEO, Castellan Industries. Castellan Industries, one of the largest technology corporations in the country, the kind of company that made headlines, that had resources beyond anything Adrian could imagine. No wonder they'd been able to deploy helicopters and private security teams within minutes of the accident. "Thank you," Adrian said, pocketing the card. "I should check on Ethan, make sure he's settled in the ICU." "We'll come with you," Mrs. Castellan said. "I need to see my son." They walked together through the pristine hallways of the medical facility. Adrian noticed details he'd missed in the rush earlier. The expensive art on the walls, the high-end finishes, the state-of-the-art equipment visible through open doorways. This wasn't just a private medical facility. This was healthcare for people who could afford anything, who had access to resources most people couldn't imagine. The ICU was on the second floor. They arrived to find Dr. Martinez completing her charting at the nurse's station. "How's he doing?" Adrian asked. "Stable. All vitals are holding steady. We've got him on broad-spectrum antibiotics as a precaution, and I've ordered the hourly labs you requested." She glanced at the Castellans. "You can see him, but please remember, he looks worse than he is. All those tubes and monitors are necessary right now." They understood, or at least they said they did, but Adrian watched their faces as they entered Ethan's room, saw the mother's hand fly to her mouth, saw the father's jaw clench. Ethan lay motionless in the hospital bed, a ventilator tube taped to his mouth, IV lines running from both arms, monitoring leads attached to his chest. The drain from his abdomen snaked out from under the blankets into a collection chamber. His skin was pale against the white sheets, dark circles under his eyes. But he was breathing. His heart was beating. The monitors showed stable rhythms. Mrs. Castellan approached the bed slowly, as if afraid she might break something. She reached out, touched her son's hand, the only part of him that wasn't connected to some machine. "He's so still," she whispered. "That's the sedation," Adrian explained gently. "We want him to rest, to let his body heal without the stress of being awake and in pain. In a day or two, we'll start lightening the sedation, letting him wake up gradually." "Will he remember any of this?" "Probably not. Patients under deep sedation rarely have memories of their ICU time. For him, it will be like a dreamless sleep. When he wakes up, the worst will be over." The father stood on the other side of the bed, his large hand resting carefully on his son's shoulder. "He's going to be okay," he said, but Adrian wasn't sure if he was talking to his wife or to himself. "I'll be monitoring him closely," Adrian assured them. "Any changes, any concerns, and I'll address them immediately." They stayed for another 10 minutes, just watching their son breathe, before Adrian gently suggested they get some rest themselves. They'd been through their own trauma today, and they needed to take care of themselves too. After they left, Adrian stood alone in the room with Ethan. The boy's face was peaceful in sleep, unaware of how close he'd come to death, unaware of the desperate surgery that had saved him. Adrian thought about his own daughter, safe at Sarah's house, probably eating dinner and doing homework and maybe asking when Daddy would pick her up. Mia, who trusted him completely, who believed he could fix anything. He pulled out his phone, looked at the time. It was after 7, the longest day of his life, and it still wasn't over. He dialed Sarah's number. She answered immediately. "Adrian, finally! I've been worried sick. Mia's fine, but she's asking for you, and I didn't know what to tell her. What's going on?" "I'm sorry, Sarah. It's been an incredible day. I can't explain everything right now, but I'm safe. I performed an emergency surgery. The patient is stable, but I need to stay overnight to monitor him." "An emergency surgery? But you're not... you were just fired." "I know. It's complicated. Very complicated. Can Mia stay with you tonight? I'll pick her up first thing in the morning and explain everything." There was a pause. Then Sarah said, "Adrian, what the hell is going on?" "I promise I'll tell you everything, but right now I need to focus on my patient. Is Mia okay?" "She's fine. She's watching a movie with Emma, but she's going to want to talk to you. Put her on." A moment later, Mia's voice came through the phone, young and worried. "Daddy? Where are you?" Adrian's throat tightened. "Hey, sweetheart, I'm at work. There was an emergency and I had to help a sick child. But Miss Sarah said you don't work at the hospital anymore." "How did you explain the inexplicable to an 8-year-old? "It's a different hospital, honey. A special case. I'll be home tomorrow morning and we'll have breakfast together, okay?" "Promise?" "I promise. Are you being good for Miss Sarah?" "Yes. We had pizza, and she said I could stay in Emma's room." "That sounds fun. I love you, Mia. Sweet dreams." "Love you too, Daddy." The call ended, and Adrian stood in the quiet ICU room, listening to the mechanical rhythm of Ethan's ventilator, the soft beeping of monitors. 12 hours ago, he'd been a doctor with a career. 6 hours ago, he'd been unemployed and lost. Now he was standing in a private medical facility, having just performed one of the most complex surgeries of his career, being offered opportunities he couldn't fully comprehend. His phone buzzed with a text. "Richard Castellan, Dr. Cole. We've arranged accommodations for you on the 3rd floor. Room 312. Please use the facility's resources as needed. And thank you again. You gave us hope when we had none." Adrian looked at Ethan one more time, checked the monitors, reviewed the drain output numbers, satisfied himself that everything was as stable as could be expected. Then he left the room, nodding to the ICU nurse on duty, and made his way to the elevator. Room 312 turned out to be another luxury space, a private room with a comfortable bed, attached bathroom, even a small kitchenette. Someone had left fresh scrubs on the bed, toiletries in the bathroom, and a tray with sandwiches and coffee on the desk. Adrian hadn't realized how hungry he was until he saw the food. He ate mechanically, his mind still processing the day's impossible events. Tomorrow, he would have to face reality again, figure out his next steps, deal with the aftermath of his termination, talk to Mia about what had happened. But tonight, he was exactly where he needed to be, watching over a child who'd needed him, doing the work he'd trained his entire adult life to do. For now, that was enough. Adrian woke at 3 in the morning to his phone vibrating against the nightstand. His hand shot out instinctively, years of being on call making him alert before his eyes were fully open. "Dr. Cole," he answered, already sitting up. "It's Nurse Chen from ICU. Ethan's drain output has increased significantly in the last hour, 200 milliliters, and it's darker than before." Adrian was on his feet, pulling on the clean scrubs. "I'll be there in 2 minutes. Start checking his coagulation labs and get a portable ultrasound to the bedside." He was out the door in 90 seconds, taking the stairs instead of waiting for the elevator. The facility's hallways were dimly lit for night mode, quiet except for the soft sounds of medical equipment humming behind closed doors. His mind was already running through possibilities, bleeding from the repair site, bile leak getting worse, infection setting in faster than expected. The ICU was bright when he entered, a bubble of urgent light in the sleeping building. Nurse Chen was at Ethan's bedside, checking the drain collection chamber. "Show me," Adrian said. She held up the chamber. The fluid inside was definitely darker than it had been earlier, tinged with red. Not pure blood, but not the clear yellow of normal drainage either. Adrian examined Ethan's monitors first, heart rate slightly elevated at 110, blood pressure holding at 90/55. Not critical, but trending in the wrong direction. He pulled back the blankets, gently pressed on the boy's abdomen. Firm, but not rigid. No obvious distension beyond what he'd expect post-operatively. "Labs?" he asked. "Just came back. Hemoglobin's down from 12 to 9.5. Platelets are adequate. INR is slightly elevated, but nothing alarming." Down from 12 to 9.5. That meant Ethan was losing blood somewhere, slowly but steadily. The ultrasound tech arrived, wheeling the machine into the room. Adrian helped position it beside the bed. "I need to see the surgical site," he told the tech. "Look for any fluid collections, any signs of active bleeding." The tech worked methodically, the ultrasound wand gliding over Ethan's abdomen while Adrian watched the screen. There, a small pocket of fluid near where he'd repaired the portal vein. Not large, maybe 30 milliliters, but it hadn't been there before. "That's new bleeding," Adrian said quietly. "Not massive, but enough to be concerning." "What do you want to do?" Nurse Chen asked. Adrian's jaw tightened. This was the moment every surgeon dreaded, when a repair that looked perfect in the OR started to fail. He could wait, hope it would stabilize on its own, continue monitoring, or he could take Ethan back to surgery now, explore the abdomen again, find the source. Waiting was the conservative choice, but conservative didn't always mean right. "Page Dr. Martinez," Adrian said, "and get the OR ready. I'm taking him back." "Are you sure? His labs aren't that bad yet." "They will be if we wait. That bleeding isn't going to stop on its own, and every hour we delay is another hour his body is trying to compensate. I'd rather go in now while he's stable than in 4 hours when he's crashing." Nurse Chen nodded and reached for the phone. Adrian stood beside Ethan's bed, his hand resting lightly on the boy's shoulder. "I know, buddy," he said softly, even though the sedated child couldn't hear him. "I know you've been through enough, but we're not done yet." Dr. Martinez arrived within 15 minutes, her hair still damp from a shower. "Talk to me," she said, going straight to the monitors. Adrian explained the situation, the increased drain output, the drop in hemoglobin, the fluid collection on ultrasound. "Something's bleeding in there. Maybe a vessel I didn't catch earlier. Maybe the repair is breaking down. Either way, I need to look. His body's been through tremendous stress already. Another surgery so soon is a risk." "I know, but so is letting him bleed internally until he's too unstable to operate on." Dr. Martinez studied the numbers, studied Ethan's pale face, then nodded. "Okay, let's do it. But I want extra blood standing by, and we're going to need to be faster than last time." Agreed. The transfer to the OR was swift and efficient. Adrian scrubbed again, the familiar ritual helping center his thoughts. Back into the surgical gown, back into gloves, back to the table where Ethan lay waiting. "Let's find this bleeding," Adrian said, and made his incision along the same line as before, opening the abdomen carefully to avoid damaging the fresh repairs underneath. Blood welled up immediately. Not the catastrophic hemorrhage of earlier, but steady, persistent. Adrian suctioned it away, explored carefully with his fingers. "There," he said, isolating a small vessel near the portal vein repair. A branch artery, too small to have been obviously damaged during the first surgery, but apparently traumatized enough that it had started leaking hours later. "Got it, clamp." This repair took only 20 minutes, a quick cauterization and suture. But as Adrian worked, he noticed something else. The bowel repair from earlier was showing signs of strain. The tissue around it was inflamed, angrier than it should be. "The bowel's not happy," he told Dr. Martinez. "I'm going to reinforce this repair, add another layer of sutures." His temp's starting to climb. 38.2. A low-grade fever. Early sign of infection, possibly, or just his body's inflammatory response to the trauma. Adrian worked quickly but carefully, adding reinforcement sutures to the bowel repair, irrigating the area again with antibiotic solution. Every few minutes, Dr. Martinez would call out vital signs, and every few minutes, Adrian would make calculations in his head about how much longer he could safely keep Ethan under anesthesia. "Closing now," he finally announced. "We're done. No drains this time. I don't want more holes in his abdominal wall than necessary." The closure went faster than before. Adrian's hands moved with confidence born of necessity, approximating tissue, tying knots, working his way through the layers. When it was done, when the final suture was placed and the dressing applied, Adrian stepped back and checked the clock. 5:30 in the morning. The sun would be rising soon. "How's he looking?" he asked Dr. Martinez. "Stable. Temperature's holding at 38.3, not climbing anymore. Blood pressure's actually better than it was before surgery. I think we got it in time." Adrian nodded, exhaustion hitting him like a wave. "Keep him deeply sedated. And this time, I'm staying in the ICU. If something else goes wrong, I want to be there immediately." Back in the ICU, Adrian pulled a chair into Ethan's room and sat down, determined to watch every monitor himself. Nurse Chen brought him coffee without being asked. "You should rest," she said gently. "I will. Once he's been stable for 12 hours. She smiled. "You're not like most of the doctors I've worked with. Is that good or bad?" "Good. Definitely good." The hours crept by. Adrian dozed in the chair, waking every time a monitor beeped, every time footsteps passed in the hallway. At 7, the day shift arrived. Fresh nurses and techs who looked surprised to find him still there. At 7:30, his phone rang. "Sarah." "Adrian, I hate to pressure you, but Mia's asking when you're coming. I need to get Emma to school, and I have a meeting at 9. I know. I'm sorry. There were complications overnight. I had to take my patient back to surgery." "Is he okay?" "He's stable now, but I can't leave yet. Is there any way you could bring Mia here?" "To where?" "Adrian, where are you?" He gave her the address, heard her sharp intake of breath when she realized what kind of facility it was. "The Castellan Medical Center? Adrian, that place is... Only certain people even know it exists. How did you... It's a very long story. Please, Sarah. I need to see Mia, and I can't leave right now. I promise I'll explain everything." A pause. Then, "Okay, we'll be there in an hour." Adrian hung up and rubbed his face with both hands. How was he going to explain any of this to his 8-year-old daughter? At 8:15, Richard Castellan appeared in the ICU, looking like he hadn't slept at all. His expensive suit was rumpled, his eyes bloodshot. "Dr. Cole, the nurses told me there were complications." Adrian stood, gestured for Castellan to step outside the room. In the hallway, he explained the night's events, the bleeding, the second surgery, the current status. Castellan listened intently, his face pale. "But he's stable now? The bleeding is controlled?" "Yes. Barring any further complications, I'm cautiously optimistic. The next 48 hours will tell us a lot." "You operated twice in less than 24 hours. Your son needed it." Castellan was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "My wife is sleeping. Finally. I gave her a sedative around 4 a.m. because she couldn't stop crying. I haven't told her about the second surgery yet." "You should. When she wakes up, she deserves to know." "Will you tell her?" "She trusts you." Adrian was about to respond when he saw movement at the end of the hallway. Sarah, leading Mia by the hand, both of them looking uncertain as they approached the ICU desk. "That's my daughter," Adrian said. "I need to—" "Go," Castellan said immediately. "We'll talk later." Adrian walked quickly down the hallway. Mia saw him and broke into a run, crashing into his arms with enough force to almost knock him backward. "Daddy, you didn't come home!" He held her tight, breathing in the familiar smell of her strawberry shampoo, feeling her small body solid and real against him. "I know, sweetheart, I'm sorry. I had to stay with my patient." She pulled back, looking up at him with Mia's perpetually serious expression. "Miss Sarah said you're not working at the hospital anymore. She said you got fired." Adrian glanced at Sarah over Mia's head. His friend shrugged apologetically. She asked directly. "I wasn't going to lie to her." "It's okay." Adrian knelt down so he was eye level with his daughter. "Yes, I'm not at Brookhaven General anymore, but yesterday something happened. A boy got hurt very badly in a car accident, and he needed a special kind of surgery. The kind that not many doctors know how to do. And you know how? Yes. So some people came and asked if I would help him, and I said yes. Mia processed this, her young face thoughtful. Is he going to be okay? I think so, but he's still very sick, and I need to stay here to make sure he gets better. Can I see him? Adrian hesitated. He's sleeping, and he has a lot of machines helping him breathe and monitoring his heart. It might be scary. I'm not scared. You're taking care of him. The simple faith in her voice almost broke him. Adrian looked up at Sarah, who nodded. Just for a minute, Sarah said. Then I really do need to get to work. Adrian led them back to Ethan's room. Nurse Chen had just finished checking vitals and smiled when she saw Mia. You must be Dr. Cole's daughter. He's been telling us about you. Mia walked slowly to the bedside, taking in all the equipment with wide eyes. Why does he have that tube in his mouth? That's helping him breathe while he heals, Adrian explained. His body is working very hard right now, so we're letting the machine do the breathing for him. Does it hurt? No, he's asleep. He doesn't feel anything. Mia stared at Ethan for a long moment. Then she carefully reached out and touched the boy's hand, the same gesture Mrs. Castellan had made the night before. Get better, she whispered. My daddy is the best doctor. Adrian's throat tightened. He put his hand on Mia's shoulder, gently steering her back toward the hallway. Outside, Sarah was checking her watch. Adrian, I really do need to go. What's the plan? Is Mia staying with me again tonight? Actually, Adrian said slowly, the family has offered us accommodations here. There are rooms for families. If it's okay with you, Mia, I'd like you to stay here with me, just for a day or two until we're sure Ethan is stable. Will I miss school? Probably, but I'll make sure you do your homework. Mia considered this. Missing school was usually a negative, but the promise of staying with her father in this strange, interesting place seemed to outweigh it. Okay, can I bring my tablet? Sarah can bring it later. Right now, let's get you some breakfast. They said goodbye to Sarah in the lobby. Adrian's friend pulled him aside while Mia was examining a large aquarium in the waiting area. Adrian, be careful, she said quietly. I don't know what's happening here, but this family, the Castellans, they're not ordinary people. They have power, resources. Getting involved with them, even as their son's doctor, could complicate your life. My life is already complicated, more complicated. Just be careful, okay? He promised he would, though he wasn't sure what being careful even meant at this point. The facility had a small cafeteria on the first floor. Adrian and Mia had breakfast together, scrambled eggs and toast for him, pancakes for her. She chattered about the movie she'd watched at Sarah's house, about her friend Emma's new kitten, about her upcoming science project, normal things, beautiful, ordinary things that reminded Adrian why he did what he did. Daddy, Mia said around a mouthful of pancake, are we going to be okay? The question caught him off guard. What do you mean, sweetheart? Miss Sarah said you lost your job. Does that mean we don't have money? 8 years old and already worrying about finances. Adrian felt a stab of guilt. We're going to be fine, he told her firmly. I'm working here now, helping Ethan, and after that, I'll find another job. You don't need to worry about money. That's my job to worry about. But you looked sad yesterday, when I talked to you on the phone. Had he? Probably. The weight of everything had been crushing then. I was tired, he said, and I was sad about leaving the hospital. I worked there for a long time, and I'll miss the people I worked with. But sometimes changes happen, and we have to adapt. You know what adapt means? Like when we had to move after you and Mom got divorced? Adrian winced. Yes, like that. Changes are hard, but we get through them together. Mia nodded, seemed satisfied with this answer, and returned to her pancakes. After breakfast, Adrian showed her to the family accommodations room on the 3rd floor. It was larger than the room he'd slept in, a suite with a bedroom, a sitting area, and a bathroom with a tub that made Mia's eyes light up. Can I take a bubble bath later? Sure, but first I need to check on Ethan. You can read or draw while you wait for your tablet, and no leaving this room without telling me first, okay? Okay, Daddy. He left her settled on the couch with a book from the facility's surprisingly well-stocked library and returned to the ICU. The morning passed in careful monitoring. Ethan's vitals remained stable, His temperature stayed at a low-grade fever, concerning but not critical. The hourly lab showed his hemoglobin holding steady, no new bleeding. At noon, Mrs. Castellan appeared, looking better after several hours of sleep, but still fragile. Adrian explained the night surgery, watching her face cycle through fear and relief and gratitude. "Thank you," she said simply, "for catching it, for fixing it, for caring enough to stay up all night watching him. It's my job." "No," she said firmly. "Most doctors would have gone home, would have left it to the nursing staff to monitor. You stayed. That's not just a job, Dr. Cole, that's a calling." By mid-afternoon, Adrian was starting to feel cautiously optimistic. 16 hours since the second surgery, and Ethan was holding steady. No new bleeding, no signs of infection beyond the low fever. His body was fighting, was healing. Dr. Martinez came by at 2 o'clock. "I'm thinking we can start lightening his sedation tomorrow morning. Let him start waking up gradually." "Agreed, as long as everything stays stable overnight." "You need to rest," she told him. "You've been up for, 36 hours?" "Something like that." "Go sleep. I'm on duty tonight. I'll call you immediately if anything changes." Adrian wanted to argue, but the exhaustion was catching up with him. His eyes felt grainy, his thoughts slower than they should be. 4 hours, he compromised. "Wake me in 4 hours." He trudged back to the family suite, found Mia absorbed in drawing. She'd created an elaborate picture of what looked like a hospital room, complete with a doctor figure that had to be him standing next to a patient. "That's really good, sweetheart." "It's Ethan, getting better." Adrian smiled, kissed the top of her head. "I need to sleep for a little while. Will you be okay?" "I'm not a baby, Daddy." "I know, but humor your old dad and promise you'll stay in the room." "Promise." He collapsed onto the bed without even taking off his shoes, and sleep claimed him instantly. He woke 4 hours later to his phone ringing. Not Dr. Martinez. Sarah. "Adrian, I'm at your house. I brought Mia's things like you asked, but there are reporters outside." "What?" "Reporters, TV vans. They're asking about you, about some surgery you performed. How did they even—" Adrian sat up, his head spinning. "I don't know. I'll call you back." He hung up and immediately dialed Richard Castellan's number. The man answered on the first ring. "Dr. Cole?" "There are reporters at my house. How did they find out about the surgery?" A long pause. Then, "I'm sorry. We tried to keep it quiet, but one of the emergency responders talked to the press. The story broke this morning. Surgeon fired for refusing to discharge patient, hours later saves critically injured child." "It's everywhere." Adrian's stomach dropped. "Everywhere?" "National news, social media. It's— Dr. Cole, the public is reacting strongly. People are angry at Brookhaven General. There have been calls to the hospital, protests even. Your former colleagues are speaking out in your defense. I didn't want this. I just wanted to do my job." "I know, but the story is out there now. You've become a symbol of integrity versus profit, of doctors who still put patients first. People are responding to that." Adrian thought about the reporters outside his house, about Mia's life being disrupted, about the attention he'd never wanted. "What do I do?" "For now, stay here. The facility is private, secure. No press can get in. Let me handle the media relations. You focus on my son." It was practical advice, but Adrian felt trapped. His life was spinning out of control for the second time in 2 days. He checked on Ethan, still stable, then returned to find Mia watching something on her tablet, her face troubled. "Daddy, there are videos about you online." "What?" She turned the screen toward him. Sure enough, there were news clips, social media posts, hashtags trending. His photo, an old one from the Brookhaven General website, was everywhere. "They're saying you're a hero," Mia said quietly. "Are you?" Adrian sat down heavily beside his daughter. "I'm just a doctor, sweetheart. I did what any doctor should do." "But they're saying the hospital was wrong, that they fired you for helping people." How did you explain the complexities of healthcare economics to a child? How did you make sense of a system that sometimes valued money over lives? "Sometimes," Adrian said carefully, "there are disagreements about the best way to help people. The hospital had their ideas about how things should work. I had mine. And sometimes when people disagree like that, someone has to leave. That's not fair. No, it's not always fair. Mia leaned against him and they sat in silence for a while, watching the sun set through the window. That evening, around 8 o'clock, Adrian received an unexpected visitor. Marcus, the security guard from Brookhaven General, appeared in the ICU waiting room holding a cardboard box. Dr. Cole, heard you might want this. It was Adrian's belongings from the hospital, the box he'd dropped on Maple Avenue when the helicopters arrived. Marcus, how did you... Stone's people brought it to the hospital, asked if anyone knew where you were. I volunteered to bring it myself. The old guard's eyes were bright with emotion. Dr. Cole, you should see what's happening at Brookhaven. The staff is up in arms. Half the pediatric nurses have threatened to quit. Dr. Chen organized a petition. Even some of the board members are questioning Brennan's decision. Adrian took the box, feeling the weight of it. His career, his history reduced to objects. That's not why I did this, Marcus. I know. But sometimes doing the right thing has consequences beyond what we expect. You saved that boy's life. People should know about that. After Marcus left, Adrian opened the box. Someone had carefully wrapped the broken coffee mug in bubble wrap. Inside it was a note in Jennifer's handwriting. We'll glue it back together. Everything can be fixed. Adrian sat with the broken pieces of his daughter's gift, thinking about whether that was true, whether everything could really be fixed or if some breaks were permanent. In the ICU, Ethan's monitors continued their steady rhythm, proving that at least one broken thing was being made whole again. The morning of the third day brought the moment Adrian had been both anticipating and dreading. Dr. Martinez stood beside Ethan's bed, her hand hovering over the sedation controls. "You're sure he's ready?" Mrs. Castellan asked, her voice trembling slightly. She'd barely left her son's side since learning about the second surgery, maintaining a vigil that Adrian recognized all too well. His labs are stable, Adrian confirmed, reviewing the overnight results one more time. No fever for 18 hours. The drain output is minimal and clear. All the indicators suggest his body is healing well. It's time to let him wake up. Mr. Castellan stood behind his wife, one hand on her shoulder. What should we expect? Confusion at first, Dr. Martinez explained, adjusting the infusion pumps. He'll be disoriented, possibly agitated. The ventilator tube will be uncomfortable. We'll remove it as soon as he's breathing adequately on his own, but that might take a few hours. Will he be in pain? Mrs. Castellan's fingers were white where they gripped the bed rail. We'll manage his pain carefully, Adrian assured her. He won't be comfortable, but he won't be suffering. The important thing is that you stay calm. Children can sense their parents' anxiety. If you're frightened, he'll be frightened. Mrs. Castellan nodded, taking a shaky breath. Her husband squeezed her shoulder gently. We're ready, Richard Castellan said, though his face was pale beneath his expensive cologne and tailored suit. Dr. Martinez began the process, gradually reducing the sedation medications. This will take time. Don't expect him to wake up all at once. It'll be gradual. Adrian pulled up a chair. I'll stay. Talk to him as he wakes. Let him hear familiar voices. The first hour passed with agonizing slowness. Ethan remained still, his breathing supported by the ventilator, his face peaceful in artificial sleep. Mrs. Castellan held his hand, speaking softly about things she'd tell him when he was fully awake, about his dog waiting at home, about his friends who'd been asking about him, about the new video game that had just been released. Around 9:30, Ethan's eyelids began to flutter. There, Dr. Martinez said quietly. He's starting to surface. Mrs. Castellan leaned forward. Ethan? Sweetheart? Mommy's here. You're safe. You're going to be okay. The boy's eyes opened slowly, unfocused and confused. He tried to speak, but the ventilator tube prevented it. Panic flashed across his face. It's okay, Adrian said quickly, moving closer. Ethan, my name is Dr. Cole. You were in an accident, but you're in the hospital now. That tube in your throat is helping you breathe. I know it's uncomfortable, but you need to stay calm. Can you squeeze your mom's hand if you understand me? For a moment, nothing. Then a weak squeeze. Good. That's very good. You're doing great. Just keep breathing with the machine. We're going to take that tube out soon, but first we need to make sure you're strong enough. Your mom and dad are right here with you. Ethan's eyes found his mother's face, and tears began streaming down his cheeks. Oh, baby, Mrs. Castellan whispered, her own tears falling freely. "I'm here. I'm right here. You're going to be okay." The next 2 hours were a delicate dance. Ethan would drift in and out of awareness, sometimes calm, sometimes agitated. Each time he became distressed, Adrian talked him through it, explaining what had happened, where he was, why he had tubes and wires attached to him. "You're very brave," Adrian told him during one particularly difficult moment. "You've been through something scary, but you're healing. In a few days, you'll be feeling much better. I promise." By noon, Ethan was breathing well enough on his own that Dr. Martinez felt comfortable removing the ventilator tube. The process was uncomfortable. Ethan gagged and coughed, but once it was out, his first words were directed at his mother. "Mom," he rasped, his voice raw from the tube. "What happened to the car?" Such a practical question, so typically childlike in its focus on the tangible details rather than the larger trauma. Mrs. Castellan laughed through her tears. "The car is fine. Well, not fine. It's totaled. But cars can be replaced. You can't." Did I almost die?" The room went very quiet. Adrian watched the parents struggle with how to answer, how much truth to give an 11-year-old who was just waking from a nightmare. "You were hurt very badly," Richard Castellan said finally, his voice rough. "But Dr. Cole fixed you. He performed 2 surgeries to stop the bleeding and repair the damage. You're going to recover fully." Ethan's eyes shifted to Adrian, studying him with an intensity that was startling in someone so young. "You saved my life." Adrian felt uncomfortable with the hero worship he saw in the boy's gaze. "I did my job. A lot of people helped save your life. The paramedics who got you here quickly, Dr. Martinez who kept you stable during surgery, the nurses who've been taking care of you. It was a team effort. But you're the one who operated on me, twice." "Yes. Thank you." 2 simple words, but they carried weight. Adrian thought about all the children he'd treated over 15 years, all the surgeries, all the late nights and difficult decisions. Most of them he'd never seen again after they were discharged. They went back to their lives, and he went back to the next patient. But this one was different. This one he'd fought for twice. This one had pulled him back from the edge of despair and given him purpose when he thought he'd lost everything. "You're welcome," Adrian said softly. Over the next few hours, Ethan gradually became more alert. He asked questions about his injuries, about the surgeries, about how long he'd have to stay in the hospital. Adrian answered honestly but gently, explaining about the heterotaxy syndrome, about why his surgery had been more complicated than normal. "So my organs are weird?" Ethan asked with the bluntness of youth. "Your organs are arranged differently than most people's. It's a condition you were born with. Your parents have been managing it your whole life. Will I be able to play soccer again?" The question every young patient asked, not whether they'd survive, but whether they'd be able to return to the things they loved. "Eventually, yes, but you'll need to take it slow. No contact sports for at least 6 months, and you'll need to be extra careful about infections now that you don't have a spleen." "I don't have a spleen anymore? We had to remove it. It was too damaged to save." Ethan processed this information with surprising calm. "Okay, what does a spleen do anyway?" Adrian spent the next 10 minutes explaining the immune system in terms an 11-year-old could understand. Ethan listened intently, asking intelligent questions, showing the kind of curiosity that reminded Adrian why he'd gone into pediatrics in the first place. Children were resilient. They bounced back from trauma that would break adults. And they asked the questions that mattered, cutting through all the medical jargon to get to the heart of what they needed to know. Around 2 o'clock, Adrian slipped out to check on Mia. He found her in the family suite, video chatting with Sarah and Emma. "Daddy!" she exclaimed when she saw him. "Guess what? My teacher sent me my homework online, and I'm already done with it." "That's great, sweetheart." He waved at Sarah on the screen. "Thanks for coordinating that." "No problem. How's your patient?" "Awake. Talking. Doing remarkably well." "That's wonderful." "And Adrian, you should know, the story is getting bigger. There are protesters at Brookhaven General. The board is meeting tomorrow to discuss Brennan's policies." Adrian sighed. "I didn't want any of this." "I know. But sometimes the right thing creates waves, whether we want it to or not." After the call ended, Mia looked up at him with those serious eyes that were so like her mother's. "Daddy, are we going to go home soon?" "Probably tomorrow or the next day, once I'm sure Ethan is stable enough that I don't need to be here constantly. I like it here, but I miss my room and my toys." "I know, baby. We'll go home soon. I promise." That evening, Adrian was completing his final rounds when Richard Castellan found him in the hallway outside Ethan's room. "Doctor Cole, do you have a moment? There's something I'd like to discuss with you." They walked to a private consultation room. Castellan gestured for Adrian to sit, then paced for a moment before speaking. "My son is alive because of you. I want to make sure you understand that I'm aware of what you've sacrificed. Your career at Brookhaven, your reputation with that hospital's administration, the disruption to your personal life. I didn't do it for gratitude. I know, but you're going to receive it anyway." Castellan stopped pacing, faced Adrian directly. "I've been thinking about what you said, about why you were fired, about children deserving advocates, about medicine being more than profit margins." He pulled out a folder, set it on the table between them. "I want to propose something that might sound crazy at first, but hear me out." Adrian opened the folder. Inside were architectural drawings, budget projections, organizational charts. "What is this?" "A pediatric surgical center. Freestanding, independent of any hospital system. Focused exclusively on complex pediatric cases like Ethan's. Cases that require specialized expertise and extended care that most hospitals won't provide because the reimbursement doesn't justify the cost." Adrian stared at the documents, his mind racing. This would cost millions to build, tens of millions. Try $75 million for the initial construction and equipment, another $20 million for the first year's operating costs until we establish sustainable funding streams. That's an enormous investment. It's a drop in the bucket compared to what Castellan Industries spends on R&D annually, and this would be a better investment than half of those projects. Richard sat down across from Adrian. "Here's what I'm proposing. I fund the construction and initial operations. You design the medical programs, hire the staff, establish the protocols. We create a center that operates on one simple principle. Every child gets the care they need, regardless of their family's ability to pay." Adrian's hands trembled as he held the architectural drawings. "Why would you do this?" "Because 3 days ago, my son was dying, and the only person who could save him was a doctor who'd been fired for caring too much." "That's broken, Dr. Cole. The system is fundamentally broken when hospitals punish doctors for putting patients first." Castellan's voice was passionate now, intense. "You saved my son because you have expertise that most doctors don't have. How many other children die or suffer because that expertise isn't available? Because their families can't afford the right surgeon? Because hospitals won't take the financial risk of complex cases? There are charity hospitals, free clinics, with limited resources and overwhelmed staff. I'm talking about building something different, a center of excellence that happens to be free, where the barrier to entry isn't money, it's medical need." Adrian looked at the plans again. The facility would be state-of-the-art, 6 operating rooms, 20-bed ICU, advanced imaging equipment, everything a pediatric surgeon could possibly need. "You'd want me to run this?" "I'd want you to build it, create it from the ground up. Hire doctors who share your philosophy. Establish the kind of culture where patient care truly comes first." I've never done anything like this. I'm a surgeon, not an administrator." "You'd have administrative support, business managers, HR professionals, legal counsel. Your job would be the medical vision, making sure this place lives up to its mission." Adrian set down the folder, overwhelmed. "This is too much. You don't even know me. You're proposing to invest nearly $100 million based on 3 days of knowing me. I'm investing based on 3 days of watching you. I saw you operate twice on my son when you could have walked away. I saw you sleep in a chair in his ICU room because you didn't trust anyone else to catch complications. I've spoken to your former colleagues. Over a dozen of them have called me in the last 2 days, all saying the same thing, that you're the kind of doctor they wish they could be, that you never compromised on patient care even when it cost you." Richard leaned forward. "Dr. Cole, I built my company from nothing. I recognize dedication when I see it, and I recognize an opportunity to do something meaningful with my money. This isn't charity. This is an investment in the kind of healthcare system I wish had been there for every family, not just mine. Adrian thought about Tommy Reeves, the boy whose discharge had triggered his termination, about all the children he'd fought for over the years, navigating insurance restrictions and administrative pressures, about the families who'd had to choose between their child's health and bankruptcy. "I need time to think about this," he said finally. "Of course. Take all the time you need. But Dr. Cole, I want you to know this is happening whether you say yes or not. I'm building this center. The only question is whether you'll be the one to lead it. Because frankly, I can't imagine anyone better for the job." After Castellan left, Adrian sat alone in the consultation room, staring at the architectural drawings. A pediatric surgical center, a place where medical need mattered more than profit, where complex cases were welcomed instead of avoided. It sounded too good to be true. And Adrian had learned the hard way that things that sounded too good to be true usually were. But what if this was different? What if this was a real chance to build something better? His phone buzzed. Sarah texting him a link. He clicked it and found himself watching a news segment about Brookhaven General. The reporter stood outside the hospital's main entrance, where a crowd of people held signs. "Reinstate Dr. Cole. Patients over profits. Brookhaven. Do better." The segment cut to an interview with Jennifer, the pediatric nurse who'd been his friend for years. She was crying as she spoke. "Dr. Cole is one of the best physicians I've ever worked with. He stayed late to check on patients. He answered parent calls at 3 in the morning. He fought with insurance companies to get kids the treatment they needed. And the hospital fired him for it. If that doesn't tell you everything about what's wrong with healthcare today, I don't know what does." Another cut, this time to Dr. Sarah Chen standing in front of her own hospital. Adrian Cole represents everything right about medicine. His termination is a loss for Brookhaven, for this community, and for every child who won't benefit from his expertise. I hope wherever he goes next, they appreciate what they're getting. Adrian turned off his phone, unable to watch anymore. The public attention was overwhelming. He'd never wanted to be the face of some movement, some symbol of resistance against corporate healthcare. He just wanted to be a doctor, to help sick children, to do the job he'd trained for. Was that really too much to ask? That night, after Mia was asleep and Ethan was resting comfortably with his parents keeping watch, Adrian walked the quiet hallways of the facility. He thought about the broken coffee mug in his cardboard box, about Jennifer's note saying everything could be fixed. Maybe some things could be. Maybe broken systems could be rebuilt. Maybe terminated careers could transform into something better. Or maybe he was being naive, letting hope cloud his judgment. He found himself back in Ethan's room. The boy was sleeping naturally now, no sedation needed. His color was better, his breathing steady and unlabored. The monitors showed strong vital signs. A success, a child saved, a family made whole again. Mrs. Castellan looked up as he entered. "Dr. Cole, I thought you'd gone to bed." "Couldn't sleep, just wanted to check on him one more time." She smiled, understanding in her eyes. "He's doing so well, thanks to you. Thanks to a lot of people." "Yes, but you were the one who said yes when you could have said no. You were the one who operated twice, who caught the complications, who stayed when others would have left. That matters, Dr. Cole. That makes all the difference." Adrian looked at the sleeping boy, at the mother who'd been terrified of losing her child, at the father who'd offered him an impossible dream. "Your husband spoke to me earlier about his proposal." "I know. What do you think?" "I think it sounds too good to be true." "My husband has a gift for making impossible things happen. When we first met, he was working in a garage with 3 friends and a dream of changing how people interact with technology. Everyone said it was too ambitious, that they'd never succeed." She gestured around them. "Now his company employs 70,000 people worldwide. When Richard sets his mind to something, it happens." "But this is different. This is medicine, not technology." "No, this is the same. It's about seeing a problem and having the courage to build a solution, even when everyone says it can't be done." Mrs. Castellan walked to where Adrian stood. "He told me about your daughter, that you're raising her alone, that you worry about providing for her. Every single parent worries about that. This opportunity would solve that problem. A competitive salary, benefits, stability, and more importantly, it would give you a chance to practice medicine the way you believe it should be practiced." without insurance companies second-guessing every decision, without administrators prioritizing profit margins over patient outcomes. Adrian was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "What if I fail? What if I build this center and it doesn't work? What if the model isn't sustainable? What if it succeeds beyond your wildest dreams? What if you save hundreds of children who wouldn't have survived otherwise? What if you prove that patient-centered care can work?" She touched his arm gently. "Dr. Cole, I understand fear. I've spent the last 3 days terrified of losing my son. But I've also learned something. Sometimes the scariest choice is the right one." After she returned to her chair beside Ethan's bed, Adrian stood in the doorway for a while longer, watching the rhythmic rise and fall of the boy's chest, listening to the steady beep of the monitors. Everything could be fixed, Jennifer had written. Maybe that was true. Maybe broken things could be made whole. Broken systems could be rebuilt. Broken careers could be transformed into something better than they'd been before. Or maybe he was about to make the biggest mistake of his life. Either way, standing still wasn't an option anymore. The ground had shifted too much beneath his feet. His old life was gone, destroyed in a single morning by a termination letter and a choice to stand by his principles. The question was what he would build in its place. Adrian pulled out his phone, found Richard Castellan's number, and typed a message. "I'd like to discuss your proposal in more detail. When can we meet?" The response came almost immediately, despite the late hour. "Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m., my office. And Dr. Cole, thank you for everything." Adrian pocketed his phone and took one last look at Ethan before heading back to the family suite where Mia slept peacefully, unaware that her father was about to make a decision that would change both their lives. Tomorrow would bring answers. Tonight brought questions. And somewhere in between was a future Adrian couldn't quite see yet, but was beginning to believe in. The sun was just beginning to rise when Adrian woke, though he'd barely slept. His mind had been racing through the night, weighing possibilities, calculating risks, imagining futures that seemed both terrifying and exhilarating. Beside him in the suite's second bedroom, Mia slept peacefully, her small chest rising and falling with the easy rhythm of childhood innocence. He showered and dressed quietly, then checked on Ethan one more time before his meeting. The boy was awake, sitting up slightly in bed while his mother helped him sip water through a straw. "Dr. Cole," Ethan said, his voice still raspy but stronger than yesterday. "Mom says you're meeting with Dad this morning, about something important." "That's right." "Are you going to say yes?" Adrian smiled at the boy's directness. "I don't know yet. We haven't talked about all the details." "You should say yes," Ethan said, with the certainty of youth. "Whatever it is, you should do it." "You saved my life. You're like the best doctor ever." Mrs. Castellan laughed softly. "Ethan, Dr. Cole has to make his own decisions about his career." "I know, but I'm just saying he's really good at his job. He should keep doing it." The simple logic of an 11-year-old cutting through all the complexity and fear to reach the essential truth. Adrian was good at his job. He should keep doing it. The question was how. Richard Castellan's office was on the top floor of the facility, a space that managed to be both luxurious and functional. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the surrounding countryside, letting in streams of morning light. The desk was massive but uncluttered, holding only a laptop, a family photo, and a model of what appeared to be Castellan Industries' first product. "Dr. Cole," Richard said, standing to shake his hand. "Thank you for coming. Coffee?" "Please." They sat in comfortable chairs by the window rather than across the formal desk, a subtle signal that this was meant to be a conversation between equals rather than a business negotiation. "I've been thinking about what you said last night," Adrian began, "about building a pediatric surgical center, about creating a place where patient care comes first. And I have questions, a lot of them." Richard smiled. "I'd be concerned if you didn't. Ask anything." "Why me?" "You could recruit any surgeon in the country with the resources you have. Someone with administrative experience, someone who's built programs before. Why offer this to a doctor you've known for less than a week?" "Because in less than a week, I've seen you make decisions under pressure that tell me everything I need to know about your character. You operated on my son when it would have been easier to walk away. You caught complications that others might have missed. You stayed in his ICU room when you should have been resting. Richard leaned forward. But more than that, I've done my research. I've spoken to your former colleagues, read your case reports, reviewed your surgical outcomes. Your success rate with complex pediatric cases is extraordinary. Your patient satisfaction scores were consistently the highest in your department. Parents trusted you because you earned that trust every single day. He paused, took a sip of his coffee. The administrators at Brookhaven General called you insubordinate. Your colleagues call you principled. I call you exactly what this project needs. Someone who won't compromise on the mission even when it's difficult. Adrian absorbed this, trying to separate flattery from fact. What about the practical aspects? Building a facility is one thing. Operating it sustainably is another. How do you plan to fund ongoing operations if we're not billing patients? Combination of approaches. The Castellan Foundation will provide base funding through an endowment, enough to cover operations for at least 5 years while we establish other revenue streams. We'll accept insurance reimbursement when families have it, but never let insurance limitations dictate care. We'll seek grants, partner with research institutions, potentially develop teaching programs that generate revenue. And yes, we'll accept donations from grateful families who can afford to give back. You've thought this through. I have an entire team working on the financial models. But Dr. Cole, I want to be clear, this isn't charity. This is an investment in proving that a different model of healthcare can work. If we succeed, if we demonstrate that patient-centered care can be sustainable, it could influence how medicine is practiced nationwide. Adrian stood, walked to the window. Below, he could see the facility's grounds, the helipad where he'd arrived in such chaos just days ago. It felt like a lifetime had passed since then. What happened at Brookhaven, he said slowly. It wasn't just about one patient. It was about a fundamental conflict between two visions of medicine. The administration saw healthcare as a business. I saw it as a calling. Those worldviews are incompatible, which is exactly why this center is necessary. A place where your worldview is the foundation, not the exception. And if I fail? If I can't make it work? Richard joined him at the window. Then we'll have tried. We'll have given children a chance they wouldn't have had otherwise. And we'll have proven that at least one person was willing to fight for something better. He glanced at Adrian. Failure isn't building something and having it struggle. Failure is seeing a problem and doing nothing because success isn't guaranteed. Adrian thought about the broken coffee mug waiting in his cardboard box, about Mia's innocent faith in her father, about Ethan's simple certainty that he should keep doing what he was good at. I want to involve my former colleagues, he said suddenly. The nurses, the doctors who supported me at Brookhaven, people who share the same philosophy about patient care. If I'm building a team, I want people I trust. Absolutely. In fact, I'd insist on it. You know who the good ones are. And I want Mia to be part of this decision. She's 8 years old, and this will affect her life as much as mine. She deserves input. Richard's expression softened. You're a good father. I'm trying to be. It's not always easy, balancing fatherhood and medicine. The center will have family support services, childcare, flexible scheduling for staff with children, family counseling. I watched my parents sacrifice everything for their careers. I don't want the people working in this facility to have to make that same choice. They talked for another 2 hours, going through details, discussing timelines, addressing concerns. Richard had answers for everything. He'd clearly been planning this since the moment Ethan stabilized. Maybe even before that, in those terrifying hours when his son's life hung in the balance and he'd realized how broken the healthcare system truly was. Finally, Adrian said, I need 24 hours to talk to Mia, to think through all of this, to make sure I'm making this decision for the right reasons. Of course, take the time you need. But as Adrian stood to leave, Richard added, one more thing. You should know that Brookhaven General's board met yesterday. Charles Brennan has been placed on administrative leave pending an investigation into his policies. Several board members have reached out to my office, asking if there's any possibility of your return. Adrian stopped. They want me back? They want to repair their public image. The protests, the media coverage, the staff rebellion, it's all creating pressure they can't ignore. They're willing to offer you reinstatement with a public apology, a raise, assurances that you'll have autonomy in patient care decisions. And you're telling me this because? Because you deserve to know all your options. If you want to return to Brookhaven, fight to change the system from within, I'd understand. That's a valid choice. Adrian thought about the hospital that had been his home for 15 years, about the pediatric ward he knew like the back of his hand, the colleagues who'd become friends, the familiarity of routines he could perform in his sleep. No, he said quietly. That ship has sailed. They fired me for doing the right thing. Taking me back now would just be a band-aid on a broken system. The problems that led to my termination would still be there, just hidden better. Richard nodded, though Adrian saw approval in his eyes. Then we'll build something better together. Adrian found Mia in the family suite, video chatting with Sarah again. His daughter's face lit up when she saw him. Daddy, guess what? Miss Sarah says there are people at school asking about you. I'm like famous by association. Adrian laughed despite himself. I'm not famous, sweetheart, just temporarily newsworthy. Can you hang up for a minute? I need to talk to you about something important. Mia said goodbye to Sarah and set down her tablet, giving her father her full attention with that serious expression she wore when she knew something significant was coming. Adrian sat beside her on the couch. You know how I lost my job at the hospital? Yes, because you were helping people the way you're supposed to help people. Right, well, Mr. Castellan, Ethan's father, has offered me a new job, a very different kind of job. What kind? He wants to build a brand new hospital just for children, and he wants me to be in charge of the medical part. I'd hire the doctors and nurses, decide how we treat patients, make sure every child gets the care they need. Mia processed this, her young face thoughtful. Would we have to move? Maybe. The hospital would be built here near this facility. It's about 30 miles from Brookhaven. We could stay in our house, and I'd have a longer commute, or we could find a new place closer to the center. Would I have to change schools? Possibly, but we could wait until summer, make the transition easier. Or you could finish the school year at your current school even if we moved. There are options. Mia was quiet for a long moment, staring at her hands folded in her lap. Adrian waited, knowing she was working through something important in her mind. Daddy, she said finally, are you happy when you're being a doctor? The question caught him off guard. Yes, very happy. You didn't seem happy the day you got fired. You seemed really sad. I was sad because I loved my job and it hurt to lose it. But you weren't happy before that either. Not really. You were always tired and stressed, and sometimes you'd come home and just sit on the couch without talking. Adrian felt his throat tighten. Had she noticed all of that? Had he been so transparent in his struggles? The hospital was getting harder to work at, he admitted. There were a lot of rules that made it difficult to take care of patients the way I wanted to. So this new job, would it be better? Would you be happy? I think so. It would be challenging in different ways, but I'd be able to practice medicine the way I believe it should be practiced, putting patients first, always. Mia looked up at him with eyes that seemed older than 8 years. Then you should do it. We can move if we need to. I can make new friends. As long as you're happy, Daddy, because you're really good at being a doctor. Ethan said so, and I think so too. Adrian pulled his daughter into a hug, overwhelmed by her wisdom and generosity. When did you get so smart? I've always been smart. You just don't notice because you're busy saving lives. He laughed, kissed the top of her head. You're okay with this? Really? Really. But can we bring my bookshelf? And can I paint my new room purple? We can bring whatever you want, and you can paint your room any color you choose. Even neon green? Let's start with purple and negotiate from there. The next morning, Adrian sent his answer to Richard Castellan, a simple text message that represented the most significant decision of his professional life. I'm in. Let's build something better. The response came immediately. Welcome aboard. I'll have the lawyers draw up the contracts. And Dr. Cole, thank you for believing in this vision. What followed were 3 months of intense planning. Adrian met with architects, reviewed equipment specifications, and began recruiting staff. His first call was to Jennifer, the pediatric nurse who'd written the note about fixing broken things. Dr. Cole, I've been hoping you'd call. Tell me you have good news. How would you feel about being the head nurse at a brand new pediatric surgical center? There was a long pause. Then, are you serious? Completely serious. Fair warning, it's going to be hard work. We're building this from the ground up. But the mission is simple. Patient care comes first. Always. No compromises. When do I start? Dr. Sarah Chen was next. She listened to the proposal, asked detailed questions about the medical philosophy and organizational structure, then said yes before Adrian had even finished explaining the compensation package. "You had me at patient care comes first," she said. "When can I give notice at my current hospital?" One by one, Adrian assembled a team. Nurses who'd been frustrated by insurance restrictions. Doctors who'd been told too many times to discharge patients before they were ready. Specialists who'd seen too many children denied necessary care because the procedures were too expensive. They were all people who'd been fighting the same battles Adrian had fought, who'd been told they cared too much, who'd been punished for putting patients before profits. Together, they would build something different. The groundbreaking ceremony was held on a clear day in late December, 4 months after Ethan's accident. A small crowd gathered at the construction site. Staff members who'd signed on, members of the press who'd been following the story, and families whose children had been treated by Adrian over the years. Ethan was there too, fully recovered now, standing between his parents. He'd regained weight, his color was healthy, and though he wore a medical alert bracelet and carried antibiotics in case of infection, he looked like any normal 11-year-old. Richard Castellan stood at a podium addressing the crowd. 3 months ago, my son was in a terrible accident. The injuries he sustained were life-threatening, complicated by a rare anatomical condition that made surgery extraordinarily risky. We searched desperately for a surgeon who had the expertise to save him. He paused, looked at Adrian standing nearby. What we found was more than a skilled surgeon. We found a doctor who'd just been fired for refusing to compromise on patient care. A doctor who said yes when he could have said no, who operated twice when once would have been enough, who stayed by my son's bedside when he could have gone home. The crowd was silent, listening. That experience showed me something I should have recognized long ago. Our healthcare system is broken. We punish doctors for caring too much. We prioritize profit over healing. We force families to choose between their child's health and financial ruin. Richard's voice grew stronger. That ends here. Today, we break ground on the Brookhaven Pediatric Medical Center, a facility that will prove a different model is possible, a place where medical need is the only criteria that matters, where complex cases are welcomed, not avoided, where children come first. He gestured to Adrian. Dr. Cole, would you like to say a few words? Adrian hadn't prepared a speech. He stepped up to the podium, looked out at the faces watching him, colleagues who'd believed in this vision, families who'd trusted him with their children, reporters who'd turned his termination into a national story about healthcare reform. I became a doctor because I wanted to help people, he said simply. For 15 years, I had the privilege of caring for sick children at Brookhaven General Hospital. I loved that work, but over time, it became harder to do the job the way I believed it should be done. Harder to fight for patients when the system was fighting against them. He looked at Richard and Mrs. Castellan, at Ethan standing between them. When I was fired, I thought my career was over. I thought I'd lost everything. But sometimes losing everything is the first step toward finding something better. This center represents a second chance, not just for me, but for every child who needs complex medical care. A chance to receive treatment without their families worrying about the cost. A chance to have doctors who can focus on healing instead of billing codes. Adrian picked up the ceremonial shovel waiting beside the podium. I can't promise we'll save every child. Medicine doesn't work that way. But I can promise that every child who comes through our doors will receive our best effort. They'll be treated with skill, compassion, and unwavering commitment to their well-being. That's the promise this center represents. That's what we're building today. He drove the shovel into the earth, turning over the first symbolic scoop of dirt. Around him, the crowd applauded, and cameras flashed, and Mia jumped up and down with excitement. But Adrian was already thinking ahead, imagining the building that would rise from this ground, the children who would be treated here, the lives that would be changed. Construction took 18 months. Adrian visited the site weekly, watching steel beams rise against the sky, seeing operating rooms take shape, inspecting equipment as it was installed. He worked with his growing staff to develop protocols, establish standards, create a culture that would support their mission. Mia adjusted to their new home, a house 10 minutes from the construction site, with enough room for her purple bedroom and her expanding book collection. She made friends at her new school, joined the soccer team, and seemed to thrive on the excitement of being part of something important. "My dad is building a hospital for kids," she'd tell anyone who'd listen, "where they don't have to worry about money, just about getting better." The pride in her voice made every difficult decision worth it. Tommy Reeves's parents were among the first to reach out when they heard about the new center. The boy Adrian had refused to discharge early, the decision that had cost him his job, had indeed returned to the ER 2 days after being sent home, presenting with acute appendicitis. The delay in diagnosis had led to rupture and peritonitis, requiring emergency surgery and a week-long hospitalization. "You were right," Tommy's father said during a tour of the nearly completed facility. "You were right to want to keep him longer. If they'd listened to you, he wouldn't have suffered those complications." "I'm just glad he recovered," Adrian said. "We're donating to the center," Tommy's mother added. "It's not much, but we want to support what you're building here. Places like this need to exist." Stories like that kept Adrian going during the difficult days when construction delays pushed back the opening date, when budget concerns required creative solutions, when he wondered if he was capable of leading something this significant. The opening ceremony was scheduled for a Saturday in June, 2 years after the day Adrian had been fired. The facility gleamed in the summer sun, 6 stories of glass and steel that represented hope and second chances. Families began arriving early, parking in the visitor lot, and streaming through the main entrance. Inside, staff members in new uniforms greeted them, offering tours and answering questions. The atrium was decorated with artwork created by former pediatric patients, colorful pieces that brought life to the medical space. Adrian stood near the entrance with Mia, watching people arrive. His daughter wore a new dress for the occasion, her hair in careful braids. "Daddy, look how many people came," she said, awestruck. "A lot of people believe in what we're doing here." "Do you think you'll save lots of kids?" "I'm going to try, sweetheart. We all are." Richard Castellan approached, looking more relaxed than Adrian had ever seen him. Ethan was with him, taller now, starting to show signs of the teenager he'd become. "Dr. Cole, ready for this?" "Ready as I'll ever be." "There's someone who wants to see you, in the main conference room." Curious, Adrian followed Richard through the building, Mia's hand in his. The conference room was filled with people, and it took Adrian a moment to realize he knew every face. The nursing staff from Brookhaven General's pediatric ward, Dr. Sarah Chen and a dozen other physicians, Marcus, the security guard who'd witnessed his termination, even Patricia from HR, looking emotional. What is this?" Jennifer stepped forward, holding a wrapped package. "We wanted to give you something. For the new center, for believing in all of us enough to ask us to be part of this." Adrian unwrapped the package with trembling hands. Inside was his coffee mug, Mia's kindergarten project, expertly repaired. The cracks were still visible, filled with gold in the Japanese tradition of kintsugi, making the breaks part of the beauty rather than something to hide. "Everything can be fixed," Jennifer said, tears streaming down her face. "You taught us that, and sometimes what's broken becomes stronger when it's put back together." Adrian couldn't speak. He held the mug, running his fingers over the golden cracks, thinking about broken careers and second chances and the long journey from termination to this moment. Mia tugged on his sleeve. "Daddy, you're crying." "Happy tears, sweetheart. These are happy tears." The official opening ceremony featured speeches from community leaders, from the medical board, from Richard Castellan. But the moment that mattered most came when the first patient arrived. A 6-year-old girl with a congenital heart defect transferred from a hospital 300 miles away because her case was too complex and her family's insurance wouldn't cover the extended care she needed. Her parents looked exhausted, frightened, desperate. Adrian met them in the lobby personally, shaking their hands, introducing himself. "Welcome to Brookhaven Pediatric Medical Center. I'm Dr. Cole. Tell me about your daughter." As they talked, as he listened to their story and examined their daughter and began formulating a treatment plan, Adrian felt the familiar rush of purpose that had been missing during those dark days after his termination. This was why he'd become a doctor. This moment, this family, this child who needed help. Everything else, the media attention, the public story, the symbolism of his journey, that was all just noise. What mattered was the medicine, the healing, the sacred trust between doctor and patient. That evening, after the ceremonies concluded and the crowds dispersed, Adrian walked through the empty hallways of the new center with Mia. They visited each floor, looking into patient rooms that would soon be filled, operating rooms where lives would be saved, waiting areas where families would keep vigil. "It's really beautiful, Daddy," Mia said. "You built something amazing." "We built something amazing. A lot of people worked very hard to make this happen. But you started it by being brave, by doing the right thing even when it was hard." Adrian knelt down, eye level with his daughter. "You know what I learned through all of this? Sometimes the worst thing that can happen leads you to where you were meant to be all along. Getting fired was terrible, but it brought us here, to this place, this purpose, this chance to help children who really need it. Do you think everything happens for a reason?" "I think we make reasons out of what happens. We choose how to respond to the hard things. And if we choose well, if we stay true to what we believe in, good things can come from bad situations." Mia hugged him tightly. "I'm proud of you, Daddy. I'm proud of you too, sweetheart, for being brave when our lives changed, for trusting me when I wasn't sure I deserved trust, for reminding me what really matters." They stood together in the atrium as the sun set, casting golden light through the windows. Outside, the sign reading Brookhaven Pediatric Medical Center glowed softly in the gathering dusk. In 2 weeks, the center would officially begin seeing patients. The operating rooms would hum with activity. The ICU would fill with children fighting their way back to health. The hallways would echo with the sounds of healing. But tonight, in this quiet moment between ending and beginning, Adrian allowed himself to simply feel grateful. For second chances, for people who believed in impossible dreams, for a daughter who reminded him daily why the fight was worth it. He thought about the cardboard box from that terrible day, about the broken mug now repaired with gold, about the long journey from termination to this moment of new beginning. And he thought about all the children who would come through these doors in the years ahead, children who would receive care regardless of their family's ability to pay, children who would benefit from a system built on compassion instead of profit. This was the legacy Adrian would leave. Not the surgeries, though those would number in the thousands. Not the medical innovations, though those would come. But the simple, radical idea that every child deserved excellent medical care, and that a healthcare system could be built around that principle. He'd been fired for believing that. He'd lost everything for standing by that conviction. And in losing everything, he'd found something far greater than what he'd lost. Adrian Cole had walked away from Brookhaven General Hospital, holding a termination letter and believing his life had collapsed. He'd been wrong. His life hadn't collapsed. It had transformed. The worst day had become the catalyst for the best decision. As darkness fell and stars began appearing overhead, Adrian took his daughter's hand and walked toward the exit. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Next week would bring the first patients. The years ahead would bring struggles and triumphs in equal measure. But tonight, standing in the building that represented hope and healing and second chances, Adrian felt something he hadn't felt in years. Peace. The kind of peace that comes from knowing you're exactly where you're meant to be, doing exactly what you're meant to do. And that was worth more than any career, any salary, any recognition. It was worth everything.